Welcome back to the Great World Podcast. I'm your host, Isaac Hedges, joined by co-host Jacob Fulmer. We're here reporting for our Thursday update. Jake, what are we looking at today?
Today we're going to be looking at some of your top issues that you could be experiencing going into 2025.
And today we are joined by special guest Nathaniel, so thank you for coming on.
Thank you for having me here.
Appreciate it. So let's get into it. Jake, what do we have?
So we're going to start with one of the top issues that we can expect to experience as we go forward through this year, which is going to be artificial intelligence. Of course, it's something that we've covered quite a bit here on the Great World Podcast, but today we're more relating it to AI hiring decisions. So companies making decisions to hire people using artificial intelligence in order to do so.
Okay, so that would be companies using artificial intelligence to recruit new employees.
Yeah, so there could be some issues with that. And so we want to cover what those issues might be, as well as some ways that the states, as well as on a federal level, how this could be regulated.
So we'll get into that. Nathaniel, what are your thoughts on artificial intelligence? Have you experimented with it much?
Not much, but I think it could help a lot of people. At the same time, it could also hurt a lot of people.
Sure. Definitely certain benefits along with certain setbacks. So, Jake, when we're talking about recruitment services that use artificial intelligence, what are some of those?
One of them is JobRite and Job Pilot and Career Flow. So I guess those are a few, not just one.
Interesting. Do we have any idea how long these have been around? If I'm being honest, I haven't really heard of these. I don't know about you guys, but
I can't say that I've really heard of them, but I know that they're going to be a really big influence this year, which there seems to be some concerns about.
all right. And what are those concerns?
Well, the concern is that since this is artificial intelligence, it's not 100% perfect, and so the decision might not be a good one that artificial intelligence is making. It might make a bad hiring decision, and so companies may want to avoid that.
Yeah, that definitely would be a concern if you get a position sent on artificial intelligence to find someone for that position. There's definitely some capacity for hallucinations, at least early on. We want to keep an eye on that because that could be problematic if you recruited a person for the wrong position.
Well, another concern that I think might even go, maybe something that people might not really think of at first, is what if artificial intelligence is picking up on people that aren't even real?
Right.
Or picking up on other AI bots that are staging this people.
Right, and we've seen that before. Again, these different hallucinations with artificial intelligence generating these things and these images of things that believed, so to speak, to exist that don't actually exist. So again, that would be perhaps even more of an issue if it not only recruited not the correct person, but not an actual person at all.
Yeah, and I know that there's certain things that we can see, like when we sign into the computer, like it asks if you're it has you do a robot test, and so that might help out a little bit, but it still might not make adequate hiring decisions. You could even hire somebody who's not even qualified for it.
Like doctors, people who are going to doctor schools, they use a lot
Sure.
of AI stuff. And
Yeah.
that could help. Well, that could not help a lot because if they accept it and go into doctor careers, you don't know what you're putting your hands in.
Sure. Especially if you're doing brain surgery, you don't want to slip up. I don't know those fields. It could be beneficial for certain things, but again, you don't want to be reliant on it, especially in something as consequential, as serious as something like brain surgery and open heart surgery.
Yeah, and so that would be a kind of a more dire example of how the wrong decision might lead to bad consequences.
All right. So I'm not sure about this. Maybe you know, or if not, if you had to guess, what would you say? What positions are these AI platforms mainly used to recruit for? Would you think more? If I had to guess, I would say that because these applications are kind of just starting out largely in their infancy, but they're starting out with more entry-level positions. They don't want the artificial intelligence to be making those big hiring decisions for them.
Like maybe an intern position.
Sure,
Something like
something
that.
like that, just
Yes.
experimenting with it, so to speak, sort of like we have on this podcast.
Yeah, it certainly wouldn't be good for some of our, most important like doctors to be hired by artificial intelligence, at least in the beginning stages. It might be useful for artificial intelligence to be used by doctors, but not to find doctors that are good for that position.
So what do you think, Nathaniel? You go in tomorrow for a major operation and you find out that your doctor was hired by artificial intelligence. Does that concern you?
Definitely, I'd be extremely scared for my life.
Sure. I suppose I would too. What about you, Jake?
Yeah, I might run the other way.
Mhm. Quite possible.
So just because we know how there are still some unreliabilities within it. I mean, that being said, there's a lot of good things that can come from it, but we also know that there's some things that it's not very accurate with. So that's important to realize that. So now that we know this, we know that the government is going to be trying to make regulations. And so that brings up the issue, should each state create like a state law that eliminates hiring decisions by AI? What do you guys think? Should the states decide?
I don't think so. As far as the business sector, the more and more the government gets involved, it tends to make it more difficult to do business. And on the current system, if they choose to do some recruitment, kind of experiment with artificial intelligence, and that backfires, that's on them. So if they decide to pawn off a bunch of these hiring decisions on artificial intelligence, that's a considerable risk. But that's the great thing about the business sector is those are risks. You calculate them on your own, take those risks, and destiny is entirely up to you. So perhaps offering some advice on this. I don't really think that's the role of government, but I guess that would be my input on that. I would offer certain precautions on that front, but at the same time, I just kind of say use that at your own risk.
And so that means that it would be up to each individual company
Sure.
to decide. Yeah, and so I guess the negative side to making regulations is that you may find out that companies don't really want to station in your state now because you're not able to use that.
Right, regulations would introduce that would effectively outlaw that.
Yeah,
Absolutely. I think that would make people more hesitant to do business in certain states with heavy regulations. And you're seeing this today in certain states that have some more regulations as far as business goes. It's more difficult to do business. So some of those companies are moving to other states where it's easier for them to operate, understandably.
and so I see 4 different routes of how this will end up playing out.
All right.
One is that a state will decide to outlaw the use of AI within a company. And the issue with that is they might lose some business.
All right.
The second option is they do nothing and they let each individual company make the decision. And then I guess that could be on like each company will see the benefits or the disadvantages to that.
Mhm.
And then the third option would be that states would say that you can use it, but that it is encouraged for each company to. And then your fourth option would be not really a choice by the states, but a federal law comes into effect. How do you think that might impact everywhere?
Well, yeah. So as far as those different options, one of the ones that you mentioned I hadn't really considered was government actually incentivizing it. I think, especially at this point, as technology is very much in its infancy, we don't know that it's that reliable. So I think of those different courses of action, that could possibly be one of the worst. I also think, as far as regulating it, outlawing it, so to speak, I don't think that would be the right answer either. I think that would be fairly over the top. And, as far as that goes, the only caveat I would offer, it doesn't seem to be much of a threat to this degree. But I guess the only caveat would be if this would be life threatening, then they would introduce some regulations on it. But unless that becomes a real issue, I don't think that's something we need to do at this point.
I mean, I think that is where a federal law might become useful, is when it becomes dangerous.
Right,
when
if there
companies
were to
are
be
using it.
Something like a robot uprising.
And it depends on, is that like a local threat? Because if it's a local threat, the federal government is going to expect it to be handled on a local level. But if it's happening in multiple states, then a federal law might be introduced. And so, considering the fact that there's a really good chance that in 2025 that there will be a federal law issued, should the states wait for a federal law to potentially be put in place, or should they just go ahead and make their own laws, or don't make their own laws and just, if they get overruled anyways, then not worry about that?
Well, I'm not sure on that one. What were you thinking?
I think considering that the federal law, that there's a really good chance that federal law will be put in place, the states should hold off until a decision has been made on a national scale.
Yeah, Nathaniel, what are your thoughts?
I'm pretty much thinking the same thing as Jake with you.
Okay. Nice. Well, anything else we might add about this sort of recruitment, artificial intelligence?
Well, I guess to kind of ease everybody's minds at this point, AI is not replacing jobs at this point. I mean, well, it is getting pretty close to that point, but not in this regard. It's not replacing jobs. It's just, regulating what people are in those positions, what actual people do take in those positions. And it's also important to realize that the majority of these, these AI-powered job search tools that we've talked about, like JobRight, JobOpilot, and CareerFlow, all of these are not actually making the final hiring decisions.
Right.
Those have not been done yet.
Mm-hmm. Right.
So
It's more so recommendations, so to speak.
Yes.
At this point.
And this is not hiring. These are not actually hiring people in positions.
Right. At least not yet.
Well, as of right now, so what these are doing is, this is if somebody wanted to find out more information about job opportunities, not necessarily about hiring them. But we're saying that this is what we already have for job research. That's going to eventually be translated into a different website that does end up doing that.
Yes, and as far as when you were talking about the concern that they might have with artificial intelligence, so this is going to take my job, this really isn't a new concern. And of course, there is some legitimate concern to that, of course, being able to automate certain things. That does take away the need for certain jobs, but along with that, there's going to be more need for, say, people in computer science, people to program all of this. So sure, there are certain jobs that we didn't see previously that there's not so much a need for because we're able to automate those. But again, there are new jobs that come along with that. And so the same English industrial revolution, there was objection to that when the machines came into the factories, and some of those jobs were eliminated. And a group called the Luddites that just objected to that. They went in and smashed all of the machines in a sort of protest. So it's certainly possible, but see, there were more jobs that came from that. So the people who manufacture those machines, fabricate the parts, and assemble them. All of those things. So as Jake said, sort of ease your mind. There should always be a place for people in there.
But these are some changes that we can't expect to see in 2025, and that makes it one of our biggest issues that we have.
Absolutely. Well, Jake or Nathaniel, I believe if you guys have anything else to add, is there anything you might add? All right. Well, we thank you all for tuning in to this Thursday update. That's all we have for now. Until next time.
I'm Jacob Fulmer.
And I'm Isaac Hedges, host of the Great World Podcast. Nathaniel, thank you again for joining us.
Yeah.
Till next time, I'm Isaac Hedges, host of the Great World Podcast. From all of us at the Great World Podcast and GWP International, good night and God bless.